Hello and welcome to the Farming Today This Week podcast with me, Charlotte Smith. This week, despite all the Prime Ministerial flux, the government revealed its long-term and long-awaited vision for farming in England. And with temperature records for June broken on an almost daily basis, how have farmers coped with the heat?
All our pigs are outdoors. They don't like the heat. So we're busy at the moment creating wallows. They wallow in the mud, keeps them cool, and it also stops them from getting sunburns.
First, visitors to farms have become an important source of income, whether they're staying, buying produce or enjoying activities. It's a business model repeated all over the world. And this week, the first Global Agritourism Conference took place in Aberdeen. Anna Hill asked the sector lead for Scottish agritourism, Caroline Miller, who runs a tourism business on the family farm, about the issues businesses are grappling with.
I think the challenges are particularly access to funding. We've seen some of the challenges around profitability in this sector with rising costs, things that we've had to absorb like national insurance, business rates going up. But I still think there's good opportunities for people with a good idea in a niche market who really understand their market to do very well in agritourism and farm retail. The main reason that I wanted to bring this global conference to Scotland was we've got 12 countries presenting over the next few days about their stats, how they grew, what their current visitor numbers are in agritourism, what is the economic impact of agritourism in 12 different countries and how have they got there.
The Global Agritourism Conference went out on the road visiting Scottish farms. Anna caught up with some of the delegates as they toured Forest Farm Organic Dairy.
My name is Panduranga Tavre from Agritourism India.
My name is Natalia Venherska. I'm from Ukraine, but living here in the United Kingdom.
I'm Nicola Miceli from Italy, PhD student in agriculture in Italy.
Hello, my name is Charlotte Wasilic and I'm a farmer in Alberta, Canada.
All four of you have seen some of the local agritourism here in Scotland, and we're here at Forest Farm, which is an organic dairy farm where you can actually see the cows being milked and then you can buy your ice cream. So far, what's your sort of impression of what you've seen?
My impression is absolutely good because it is helping them to brand their farm to the urban areas, and also it is helping city people to see the farm where the milk comes from, and that is, I think, a wonderful experience.
In India, is there agritourism? Is it big?
Yeah, and that is what the world thinks of, because India has more than 3,000 farms doing agritourism activities for last 25 years. And the school students, we have made it compulsory for one educational tour to agritourism farms.
So you've had help from the government there?
Yes, we have help from government, we have policies in place.
Nicola, how does this compare with Italy? Because Italy has had a long tradition of agritourism.
I would say accommodation is a lot more prevalent where I live in terms of agritourism, farms hosting guests as well as serving food. I live now in the Dolomites region. It's always been a touristy region, even before agritourism was developed. It's still important to see how the sector is developing at other paces and in other territories, and also learn from them because it's not perfect also at home.
Natalia, obviously Ukraine is not in a position at the moment to offer agritourism, but here you are in the UK working on it, ready for when it can happen.
Yeah, but it's for international visitors. But inside country, like domestic tourism is pretty developed now, because rural tourism, including agritourism, became like medicine for people, for recovery, for rehabilitation, especially for people who struggle under the war, especially from front line, because people need rest, they need peace, and only rural area could offer that for now.
Charlotte, how different is agritourism in Canada to here?
Where we are, there is no public transportation for a long, long ways, and something like this isn't even fathomable. And I think that Scotland and the rest of the UK has really laid the framework for us to be able to do that. We're in the province of Alberta, which is very famous for the Rocky Mountains and the Badlands, and really that gets all the big press attention when it comes to touring Alberta. And we do have an incredible amount of tourists, but I think now the more that people realize about agritourism, and you can go and see massive herds of cattle on beautiful rolling landscapes, and so capitalizing on that. For us, sharing this story on social media is very important, and Forest Farm really exemplifies that with the window that you can look in and watch the cows being milked, and then you go grab the milk. So everything tells a story and everything is connected, and I think that's really important. And not only are the visitors who are coming to various farms are being connected, but now we're all connected.
Delegates at the inaugural Global Agritourism Conference in Scotland talking there to Anna. After Sir Keir Starmer announced his decision to stand down as Prime Minister on Monday, Number 10 said that the business of government would continue. Quite a week then for DEFRA, the Department for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, to publish its long-awaited England's Farming Roadmap 2050. The idea is to have a 25-year vision for agriculture to give farmers certainty beyond the next harvest. It was the brainchild of Steve Reid when he was Secretary of State for the Environment. 2 years down the line, the current incumbent, Emma Reynolds, announced the plan in the House of Commons.
For too long, farmers have been asked to navigate profound change without a clear sense of government's plan for the future. The pressures of fast-moving technological change, geopolitical instability, volatile global markets and climate change are real. I have met farmers across England, and they are not asking for protection from change. They're asking for the tools, the stability and the genuine partnership with government that allows them to adapt, grow and thrive.
DEFRA bullishly described this as the most significant moment for English agriculture since the Second World War. The roadmap painted a picture of an industry on the cusp of huge change, facing serious challenges, and acknowledged climate impacts and global instability place greater strategic weight on domestic food production. Emma Reynolds told the Commons a shift to lower input, more sustainable farming would help protect the industry from shocks like those caused by the Iran war.
We need a resilient farming sector, ready for whatever comes next. We live in a volatile world. The pressure on fertiliser and fuel prices underlines why we need farming systems that are less exposed to global shocks. At the same time, climate change is reshaping growing conditions and technology is moving fast. This roadmap sets out how we will strengthen the climate resilience, ensuring farmers are able to adapt and tackle the impacts of droughts and flooding.
Well, measures in the roadmap include better targeting of environmental payments in England, funding for tech to drive profitability, and also money to help farmers collaborate. The National Farmers Union welcomed the ambition, but said that the plan falls short on action and even shorter on means of delivery. While Wildlife and Countryside Link, a coalition of 97 conservation groups, welcomed what they called a bold step in the right direction, while pointing out that more funding will be needed. Well, rolled in with the Farming Roadmap is the government's response to the profitability review it commissioned from Baroness Minette Batters, published last year. She gave me her reaction.
It sets out a long-term vision or the focus on a long-term roadmap. That in itself is a substantive change, and my goodness, is it needed. What is missing and what needs populating now is how that roadmap is actually going to work and how it is going to make a difference to individual farms.
So the difference that they're trying to make here is to shift to a more sustainable way of farming, lower inputs. What do they need to do to make that happen? Because I'm sure the government would point out they spend a lot of money on environmental schemes, public money for public goods in England.
Absolutely. And of course, in line with the legislation, they have to decrease the impact of food production. But the critical point is actually we need to cut costs, we need to increase production in many areas, and we need to decrease impact. At the moment, food is being pushed out. You've got credits like biodiversity net gain excluding orchards and food-producing trees. So we really need to, I think, pivot. DEFRA is doing its absolute best. I've little doubt that Emma Reynolds is working morning, noon and night. but it is not quite structured how it needs to be. And of course, so many things on land use, on farming, on food go across Whitehall, planning being a classic case in point, reservoirs. We need a different approach with a different mandate in order to deliver this farming roadmap.
Now, part of this announcement did include the government's response to your report, including that they've agreed to move the Groceries Code Adjudicator out of trade and into DEFRA. What do you make of their response?
Again, a bit like the farming roadmap, we need now to fully furnish the wider recommendations. And, I was very struck by the value of things like environmental horticulture. They have a massive ambition, the Horticultural Trades Association, of course, to grow that sector. So when we're producing more trees, more green spaces, growing more hedges, why can't we do it here? And I talked about the balanced scorecard, not just for food and increasing more British food on more British plates, but also the opportunity to be growing our commercial timber for our rooftops, all of which is a huge part of growth in our economy.
And the government might say that actually a lot of that is not going to be up to them. It's going to be up to the industry to change and to attract private investment.
I would totally agree with that. But really a word of caution. Supply and demand are critical when you are producing fresh ingredients. And that is why I set out the partnership board in the way I did, because at the moment you've got dairy, too much milk, really hurting dairy farmers. But, the ability to make cheese, butter, dry it, that's where the opportunities lie. But you have to manage that supply and demand carefully. So government has a role, and the partnership approach is critical to success.
Baroness Minette Batters. Well, one of the challenges UK farmers face is increasingly extreme weather as the effects of climate change are felt. This week has seen intense thundery rain and record-breaking June temperatures. The heat's led to several livestock markets cancelling their sales on animal welfare grounds. Tame Market in Oxfordshire's one of them. Simon Draper from Tame Farmers Mart Auctioneers told me about the decision.
We planned on Monday that we would cancel the Wednesday market, the sheep market, because of the weather, and on a Wednesday we tend to have sheep stopping overnight or sort of later at night, and we felt we couldn't cope with those and it wouldn't be fair on them. And we were planning to go on Friday as normal because it sort of said on Monday that it was going to be 27 degrees, and as the week's gone on it's got hotter and hotter. And a conversation with our vet suggested that we ought not to hold a market, and we sort of tried to mitigate the heat as much as we could, but we felt at the end of the day it was probably the right thing to do from a welfare point of view, mainly of the animals, but also people, that we'd be better to scratch it this week.
Given the age and the style of the market, it'd be very difficult to make it cool because it's basically open-sided sheds, isn't it?
Correct. I mean, there's a big area in the middle where the cattle would be on the concrete. The reflection off the concrete of the heat would probably put it up by another 10 degrees.
Have you ever had to cancel a sale due to heat before?
No, this is the first for us.
Do you expect you might have to do it again?
I hope not this year. But the answer is very possibly. We're 2 years away from an all-singing, all-dancing new market, which will be covered. And that's a different sort of story to what we face at the moment. But where we are at the moment, if temperatures stay as they are, yeah, we will have to look at when we hold our sales, what time of day, is there anything we can do extra to mitigate it, to carry on with holding one.
Simon Draper. Well, farmers have also been taking steps to protect their livestock at home. Will Simpkin runs Essington Farm in the West Midlands, with pigs, cattle, fruit and veg all sold through his farm shop.
All our pigs are outdoors. They don't like the heat. So we're busy at the moment creating wallows, shade, things like that to try and keep them cool. They wallow in the mud. It keeps them cool, and it also stops them from getting sunburns. At the same time, moves all our cattle now into fields that have got plenty of shelter, so trees to sort of lie under, plenty of water, things like that, really.
And what about the fruit and veg? Is that coping in the heat?
So our pumpkins were established in good conditions, so they've got the roots down into moisture, and they're loving the heat at the moment, so they're growing really well. Our strawberries are ripening very quick, so we've got loads of strawberries. So we're trying to sell those as quickly as we can, but it does create an issue on the fruit side because obviously it brings it on so quickly. You've got an abundance and you're trying to sell it. So sometimes supply doesn't quite meet demand, or there's an oversupply. And so we're picking as hard as we can, special offers, things like that.
And what about you? What about the farmers in all this?
We just do what needs to be done. Just simple as that. We don't have much choice. So, if there's jobs to be done, then we just get on and do it. One of the issues that we've got is that we still do natural service with our pigs.
That means you put the boar in with the sows?
That's it. Yeah. And what happens in the extreme heat is that A, the boars don't want to work, and B, the sperm count drops. So what we're going to see is a drop in conception rates during the month of June, probably. So, sometime next year there'll be a gap, and that'll be because of the hot weather in June.
Will Simpkin in the West Midlands. The heatwave is the last thing vegetable growers in the east of England needed after a dry spring. Will Shakeshaft is Managing Director at Greens of Soham in Cambridgeshire. They're a major UK potato and beetroot grower.
We found, certainly over the last 2 years, our irrigation kicks in earlier. So on beetroot, for argument's sake, we're now having to irrigate for establishment and germination, whereas in the past, there's been enough moisture in the soil to get the seeds up and growing before we have to put irrigation on. But now we're putting potentially 2 irrigation passes on all of the beetroot to get them up to a stage where we've got enough establishment and an even establishment. On potatoes, especially this year, we were having to irrigate crops before they germinated and before they emerged, just to get the soil profile wetted up.
How much extra does that add to the cost of growing?
So usually we've been spending around about £2 million on irrigation across the business. Last year we were in excess of 3 million, and the way this year is going, it's going to be in excess of 3 again. So it's one of the biggest costs we have within the business.
And can you recover that from your customers?
We have really good relationships with our customers. A lot of them sit down and want to understand that. Also understanding, the risk of running out of water. We talk to them about preventative measures that we could put in place. So how are we working the soils? What are we doing with cover cropping to keep moisture levels high? None of them really want to go and push cost of production up and put prices back to consumers, but it is getting more expensive to grow crops, particularly when we're trying to achieve the highest quality levels.
Are you confident into the future that you'll have that water available?
Today, no. Particularly in East Anglia, we are under huge pressures, especially where we are here on Cambridgeshire. The water requirement for households in Cambridgeshire is massive. So particularly water abstraction groundwater licences are under threat. We know winter levels are high, so our focus is on how do we work with EA and construct and build new reservoirs to capture all this water which is surplus in the winter, put it into new reservoirs for us to then utilise through the summer. That's a really easy thing for me to say and do. In reality, to implement that and put it into place, and also get the budget to build and commit to that infrastructure over a longer period of time. As an industry, especially in East Anglia, that's absolutely required, because it's a concern. Next week, we could be coming into irrigation bans where we've got river waters coming into nighttime only irrigation, and we know groundwater levels are dropping as well. So it's a big risk to our business.
What are you doing in the longer term to sort of adapt to the changes, to the new reality, I suppose?
We do a huge amount of work on variety development. We're absolutely looking for more drought-tolerant varieties and less varieties that pack up through stress. Long term, it's about farming on the right land that's going to sustain the weather impacts we get, planting at exactly the right time, and then pulling them out of the ground when they're mature enough and ready. Because it's not only just the spring-summer harvest with warmer, drier autumns as well. We're having to save water ahead of harvest to make sure the quality and bruising is under control. But ultimately, long term, it's about healthy soils, a sensible rotation, and having enough water security around us.
So if you were able to choose the weather for next week, what would we be having?
I would love to have temperatures in the mid-20s, and I would love to have, let's say, 8 mil of rain every night for 7 nights to help us get the soil moisture deficit back up, which we are trying hardest now, irrigating twice a week to get us into a position where the crop is growing healthily rather than under this stress.
Will Shakeshaft there. After a blisteringly hot week come the reminders to take care in the countryside to reduce the risk of fire. Already this week there have been moorland fires in Derbyshire and Lincolnshire. Well, the government's announced a £100 million investment to help tackle wildfires, to offer better protection for the countryside and rural communities. Specially trained strategic teams will be hosted by fire services in 4 locations in England and in South Wales from next month. Dave Swallow is the National Fire Chiefs Council's Wildfire Tactical Advisor. He told Kaz Graham how the teams will make a difference.
The specialist teams have undergone additional training and skills acquisition and the investment in assets, so vehicles and equipment, which will allow us in the UK to start adopting different and more advanced tactics in fighting wildfires.
And they're going to be based in 4 locations in England. They're Lancashire, Greater Manchester, Northumberland and London. Also South Wales as well. I mean, how will that help if there's, say, a major fire in Yorkshire or Dartmoor?
Well, that's partly the reason for them being spread across the country. They're not going to be on an immediate response like local fire crews are. They're there for support, as other national resilience assets are. So we have similar assets around urban search and rescue, high volume pumping. These as a wildfire national asset will mobilise in the same sort of way. So they'll be expected to be there within a couple of hours where they're requested and then get to work almost immediately when they arrive.
And tell me a bit about the kinds of new ideas and strategies that these particular specialist firefighters have been learning about. Because, I mean, they've been getting hands-on, getting experience overseas, haven't they?
Yeah, that's right. We've got a lot of links with international colleagues in countries, across Europe, the States, Australia, and others. And we've always been trying to pick up and take learning from them. And this is that next step, that they've experienced the fires that we're now starting to see in the UK, especially when we see the weather conditions that we're having in the next few days. And, that we saw the long dry period last year and the excessive heat and very dry few days we saw in July and August in 2022. They're changing they're changing the ferocity, probably is a better word, of the wildfires that we're seeing and the intensity that we're seeing to be more akin to those that are seen in southern Mediterranean countries. So we're now starting to have to adopt the tactics and the techniques that those Mediterranean countries have been using for a few years.
I mean, I know that you've been involved hands-on trying to put wildfires out. What is that like?
Well, we're looking for opportunities to stop the fire and contain it, really. And sometimes that is a decision about having to lose or leave a piece of land to burn until we get to a fire break, because actually it's more manageable to create fire breaks. And these specialist teams will be able to do that by cutting ground or even using a tool called a drip torch, which actually puts fire on the ground to create the fire breaks that we see. As these fires become more ferocious and intense, it's about removing fuel ahead of the fires rather than putting firefighters in harm's way right up against the flames and in the smoke.
Dave Swallow there from the National Fire Chiefs Council. Well, if the effects of climate change are bringing us some of the problems usually associated with the Mediterranean, like wildfires, they're also making it easier to grow crops like grapes here in the UK. Winemakers have been very glad to see the sun after some experienced badly timed frosts in the spring. Zoe Evans from Rowton Vineyard in Shropshire told Sarah Swadling why this is a very opportune moment for high temperatures.
Well, it's come at a very good time, really, because the vines have just come into flowering. So we really do want dry and, particularly not wet weather during the flowering period. So it is actually perfect for us. And vines, being Mediterranean plants, have got very deep roots, so they can cope with the heat and they look lush and green and very happy.
Where are we looking for the blossom?
Generally, you've got the main trunk that comes up to the fruiting wire, which is about hip height. And then just above there is where the grapes will be. So it's in that first sort of fruiting zone. Everything above will just be a big panel of leaves, which will be our kind of solar panel, as you were, creating lots of photosynthesis to feed the energy into the grapes.
You can just see the tiniest, teeny tiny little grapes just forming.
So these ones are just finishing flowering now, so the little stoma push off a cap, which is why we can't cope with wet weather at this period, because the cap can get stuck during wet weather and then the berry won't become fertilised. But obviously, because of the dry weather, most of the berries have set really well, which makes for an even bunch, which is much easier when it comes to harvest, because we won't have kind of small berries and big berries in the same bunch. So we've got very even fruit set. This variety, Solaris, is all set. The Pinot is just finishing and the Seyval's just starting. So we're almost there.
Do you dread a really heavy thunderstorm then at the end of a heat wave?
Big showers would be fine. It's just prolonged rain. So 2024, the weather in June, early July was just torrential rain all day, every day. And that caused us very bad problems with fruit set. So yeah, the odd shower's fine, but we just don't want a lot of it for a long period of time.
Zoe Evans there from Roughton Vineyard. And that's it from us. I'm Charlotte Smith. The producer was Sarah Swadling. And Farming Today this week is a BBC Audio Bristol production.